the setup. I forgot the egg pen. So the setup here is with Masa and Cruz going against each other. And both of them try to... well, Cruz, he wants to displace Pokpo onto point so that everyone from Paris can engage on him. But Masa, he wants to boop Ben Best forward. Cruz can also go for Ben Best, for Pokpo forward, but Pokpo doesn't position for Cruz. So now Masa went for the boop. They lock Pokpo. Dogman is shooting onto Ben Best, but he's on point. And there's Ben Best dead. That's how quick it goes. And now they won the fight. So afterwards they just clean up. For second fight, Paris, they keep the Symmetra. And they use the Symmetra to get onto high ground. I'll show right in a second. So, gonna lower the casters. Now, the Fran and Deiko, they're up here, they're just poking. They're not doing anything special, not looking to do anything special either. The position they have up here is because if Paris, they decide to go all the way in the alley, well, then the Fran and Dako, they can just poke down right. But if Paris decides to go for high ground, the Fran, he can decide to rotate to high ground. He can also drop down, and Deiko, they can also drop down. So Paris, keep you up here. The Fran, he notices that as they're walking up, he can land on top of high ground. He can try to intercept them or let them intercept him. Then, because they use a stun on the Fran, all he has to do is use bubble, escape, and drop down. Now Paris, they drop down as well, and because they drop down, Atlanta can now engage onto them because they don't have Paris doesn't have any more stun, and they are kind of squishy with the Symmetra pick. Also, very important to mention here, when switching to Finz's perspective, he only has one turret loading. And I can't really see, but I'd assume the turrets are still in the back. They're not really on the point, or on the portal, I mean. So, because Paris can't set up here, it's a really good fight for Atlanta. And it's very hard to see the stun. Just gonna lower this. It's very hard to see the stun early on onto the Fran. Gonna try and find it here. There it is, that's the stun. They rotate down. Masa helps booping. Now they use the friendly bubble on Ben Best as well. That's another key thing. And that's a free engage. Because they use the bubble, you can now engage and use your own bubble. Even if you don't have a bubble, it's a good engage. Then for third fight, Paris switches the Symmetra to D.Va. And they switch the Symmetra to D.Va because they're too far behind on the ult economy now. Because Finzi doesn't have his ult. And if they don't wanna get snowballed, they need to switch now. And the reason they stayed on Symmetra for the second fight was because Atlanta still didn't have their ultimates. They didn't have D.Va Bomb, they didn't have Beat, they didn't have Trance, Grab, etc. They had Rally and Shatter, but that's, you know, normal, expected. Then, let's see what happens more. Yeah, they basically need to win the first or second fight for the Symmetra to work out, but didn't. And so Paris will rotate over here to alley, to dark, line point. And when I spectated the Fran, it looks like Cruz is the main target here, but also he right-clicks Cruise, but right-clicks behind the shield, so he gets 2 in 1 basically. And now all you have to do is farm grab. You basically set up for a strong fight where, let's see, Dako, yeah, Dako I think gets boop. No, Masa boops out half of Paris, and then focusing down. I think Pip gets focused down. So they split Paris as they push into dark here. And this is such a strong position. Just, you know, because you can spam above shield and you can get a ton of AoE. Now let's see, Masa is going for the boop here. There it is. Booping Ben Best. Next fight, that's when Hip gets focused. But anyways, Ben Best dies first. That's a fight you just clean up. Let's see, 4th fight. Atlanta, they disengage from Dark. Respawns come back in for Paris. Both teams use their grab. And now let's see, before we go here, I want you to pay attention to Bruce and Fincy over here. Now the rest of Paris, they're gonna walk into the right side. And because Fincy is on the left side, this is a free grab now for the Fran. And yeah, Paris used their own grab as well. But Fincy hasn't farmed up his bomb. Dako uses his bomb. And automatically, Atlanta wins this fight.
They were bringing up the rear with the Matrix and the Reinhardt shield, and now they're just going to go in.
Yeah, DeFran just lobs the grab in there, because why not? Going to try to throw that self-destruct. No kills out of that one, though. Dako
Shadow comes out. Big boop as well. And I think it was a mistake by Paris to use the grab, since they didn't have anything to combo with it. Here's the fight where I mentioned Hip gets focused. So they go alley again. Erster, he intercepts Fincy and then stun locks Hip. And that's GG, basically winning the round here. Cruz dies, but that's another thing. Fincy, stunned, free access to Hip. And once Erster's in, the rest of the team can engage as well. Pokpo going for cleave damage. And that's how they win Runes. Now for Well. First fight. Atlanta rolls out with the Orisa Torb. And now they end up saving the Torb turret instead of putting it on high ground like they did versus Mayhem. And I think it's because they expect Paris to play Winston Goats and not Rhine Goats. Because if you play Rhine Goats, it's a bit harder to kill the Torb turret if it's placed above you in a choke where it shoots you in the back, basically creating a crossfire. And Dafran, he ends up putting the Torb turret behind him, very far back, for example, into alley, here. Torb turret goes down, and it's not reached by the Winston cleave damage. And I think that's because if they play Winston Goats, they can single out the Torb turret and then Torb loses value. So this is a good rotation, well, good flank, I guess. Just a good rotation by Paris, because they minimize the damage. They don't get sucked. And Atlanta has now also used their shield, so because shield is down, there will be a small delay until yeah, they are safe, and they have to force a rotation here with speed. And it was hard to see, but as Winston jumps in here, the friend places his turret, and he places it far back so that it gets max damage but also survives. And once the turret is down, now you can play for the cover, you can play corner, and Pogba, all he does is fortify, bubble, etc., and stay alive.
Pops that molten core, pushes
Soon gets pulled in
back in.
as well. Big boop.
What Masa? How in the world? Finding
Kills already.
and so Popo just this fight, claiming the point.
And that's a strong fight by Atlanta.
Torbjorn, and remember, Torbjorn
Now for second fight, Atlanta is set up far back on point, and they do that so Paris needs to use jump or speed in order to get to them. And they do that without deploying the turret until Ben Best has used his jump. And I think this is just really smart, very disciplined, in a good way. And so yeah, turret comes out, Paris, they can single out the turret, and Soon then get... Now this is where Soon gets pulled into the well. I keep mixing up the fights here.
Now, important to note, the Fran's never finished this round on Torbjorn.
Now, if Paris wants to reach them, how to say, they can decide to either go right side, main, or left side. The thing is that Masa is keeping control of the lighthouse here, so it's very difficult to just surround them by coast. Also, because they're playing with Lucio,
force him to switch. That's
they can out-rotate them. So they need to go for main here.
But they haven't been able to win it all the time. CFEA is able to stick with it this time around, and that's another one.
There's a kill on Soon,
Pulls Soon right into the well. You gotta watch out.
and here's the turret again.
Halt, man. The Fran finishes up.
I think it's still the same turret as before. Paris, they lose people,
Ben Beston.
and now Defran, he ends up trying to chase,
Paris just looking.
goes for an overextends. He overextends here and then gets chased back and killed.
Do get the kill on the dog.
And
That's gonna be about it.
yeah, the fight keeps going for quite some time.
popping up to make the retake so much harder for Paris.
Sure enough.
There it is.
Defran comes back with lava, and so far so good. No big deal that Defran died because they keep the fight going.
Cover everything. Give his team some zoning.
Paris used trance,
In with the transcendence. That's gonna let them walk all over that.
and I think Paris made the right choice of keeping the fight going because now the ult economy is gonna get reset.
Spirit ultimate. But now it's gonna be
They end up using a lot, like they use trance, they use beat, and they use primal, they use bomb, grab as well.
for both teams.
And
Coming in, and that's gonna be a kill on the bench.
if they would lose this, then Atlanta, they can just set up for strong positions again. They can counter the Winston, and it's very hard to get the grab going if you can position against grab to counter it.
Despite the lead to another long
Atlanta got a
finally takes
So they got it to 90% here,
his jump to a
93,
now. So Fran
and because Defran died, well, not that died, but because Atlanta lost the point, Defran switches to Zarya. All they need is one fight, and not one fight, but they need to win one fight, and that's why Grav is stronger than Lava, for example. I think it's interesting that Pokpo is staying on Orisa here, though. I think he's staying on Orisa because he's favoring the orb, but also Fortify, and maybe it's personal preference as well, the choice of tank. But Malsa and Pokpo, they end up going for boops and pulls into the well, and I think it's a good synergy. It makes it very difficult for Paris to play freely in main.
will switch over to Zarya now, but hey, 93%, that's fantastic if you're Atlanta.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, once you become the attacker, that Torbjorn becomes a little bit less useful. So that's a good swap over to Zarya. Atlanta Reign, one fight.
And here's the danger. You have Pokpo pulling into well, and then you have Masa here on the corner, grouping people forward, if they engage. And I think they went for high ground here because if Paris doesn't cover this choke here, and also entry to a cage, then they can just simply drop and set up there very easily. And it's hard for Winston to then just jump in, kill people, right? But since Paris went to the left, now Atlanta did just speed to main, and they have this whole right side completely secured because of Paris playing for the left side.
And they should be able to win this one. They have over 90% already. Brawling it out now. They've got that transcendence to try to move in a bit more aggressively, but Paris playing patiently, backing out, giving Atlanta some room.
Now I think there's a small mistake here done by Pogba and Defran, I think as well as Massa. They see Cruz over here, and it end up chasing Cruz or going for Cruz, but that in itself makes it so I think it's a bait by Paris, because Paris then engages 5v3 or 5v4 onto Atlanta.
Just trying to position themselves, build up a bit
And
more
it
power on the defense.
delays basically the grab because, yeah, Defran is gonna die here.
The play.
Build up the offense.
So now it's the last fight, or about to be the last fight. They start on high ground again. They have bongos, and I think they want to use bongos here to farm grab and stuff, and then try to use grab bomb combo. But Defran he ends up dying before he gets the grab, so he switches to Tracer then to cap.
Online now too.
Yeah, not relying on those environmental kills, that's for sure. Soon, waiting for it, has the grabber.
That's a big kill on Nico at first.
Down already. There's the grab, they lose soon, but that self-destruct from Vince something here. With that primal rage though from Benbes is going to be tricky. It does end now, and Dogman is down. Dago, a few members of Atlanta still may be able to claim this fight.
Pogba not dying here is very big because well, not big, but it's just I think it's a skill matchup when it comes to shield kiting and everything. He basically outplayed Finzi here, in my opinion. Now he dies when Finzi is baby diva, but that doesn't really matter. The thing is, if he dies when Finzi is in the mech, that's a completely different story, because then the baby diva comes back up on full HP and can try to escape or being supported, etc. And then they end up, yeah, fragging out, killing Atlanta's, no, Paris respawns. If we go for, well, no, I mean Hollywood here. 10102. Let's see here. Atlanta, they start attacking. Now, what Atlanta is gonna do, they're gonna rotate to alley, and they want to avoid an early engage onto Paris. So they basically skip stairs, they don't go main, but they also don't enter point immediately as they go around the corner on alley. They're waiting for boops because, well, they're trying to keep Cruz under control, because Cruz seems to try to use Cafe to go for boop onto Pogba. And once Cruz has to rotate backwards, but also, once he has to rotate backwards, that's when it seems like Atlanta is engaging. Obviously, there's a bit more to it, but it feels like Erster and Massa is supposed to control Cruz, and because Cruz then rotates, Massa can go for boop onto Benbest. And that's what ends up securing a kill on Benbest later on.
We are going to see how Atlanta can handle one of the best teams at this strategy in the league in the Paris Eternal.
Atlanta Reign on the attack, speed boosting themselves around the corner. They want to try to...
And worth mentioning here, this corner here is very good for the attackers because, let's see here. Well, it's good for defenders, but also attackers. And the reason it's good for defenders, to start with, it's because Reinhardt, if he holds close, he gets his first swing into the enemy Reinhardt if the Reinhardt is holding corner here. But as an attacker, you can counter it by simply playing dumpster, but also boxes, and then you don't really position yourself to get swung at first. It's very good for supports as well, as mentioned in the chat, because you can keep supports back here and keep them in the stairs, etc. And the downside is enemy Lucios, they like to play for this high ground here and come and boop behind, forward, isolate you. And there's some more, but yeah. Big to important, well, big to mention. You can create chokes by these corners. So there's a choke here and a choke here. And you simply don't step in front of the chokes in this area if you don't want to get blown up. But if you like you as Atlanta here, just take space by, well, small steps in securing the corner basically. And you'll see exactly what I mean. The Fran is gonna be very patient with the bubble usage here as well. If the bubble goes down on Pokpo before the bubble on Benbest, Paris, they can just all in onto Atlanta. However, Atlanta uses their bubble onto Pokpo early on. Well, not early on, but they use it in the fight when they engage, but they do it so that Paris uses their bubble and they pop the bubble on Benbest so that Masa can go for a boop at the same time. I think it's a set play. I'm not sure though. So there's a bubble. You see Pokpo, he has to disengage. And it's just to get some energy for the Fran. Now, you can't see it on this perspective, but the Fran doesn't get much value from his bubbles here. He doesn't have much energy at all. And Atlanta tries to do the same with Soon's bubbles. Just because, you know, you don't want to give free energy to the enemies, right?
It's all about Zarya charge, and Soon not getting his bubble shot out right there. So all about that teamwork and coordination.
Now they are continuously poking onto Benbest. Because if Benbest keeps using his shield, they can eventually go for an all-in. Because, well, not all-in, but eventually they have to rotate backwards. And that's when they can force a harder engage. You see Pogba, he plays the corner here. Corner, but also dumps their corner. And he recharges his bubble, no, his shield, how to say, just little by little, just like Benbest does. But because Benbest is in a more tricky position here because of the doorway, he can't remain in the doorway, while Pogba can. Because if Paris engages here, they're gonna engage into a very tiny choke.
Maximizing your damage on the barriers and making sure your Zarya is going to have ample damage when the fight is.
And you see Cruz is always on the side here, always on the side, but Erster is keeping him under control. Now, Cruz on a mission again. Erster controlling with the stun. And now Cruz is backing off. Masa, he gets his, how to say, opening window. And this is when Pogba goes in. Bubble on Pogba, bubble on Benbest. Masa, you don't really see him, but he's down here. They want to pop the bubble, and he's crouching because he wants to pop. He wants to boop Benbest upwards, but inwards as well, over here. And there's the boop. Get a discard on him, pop the bubble, and yeah, easy kill. And that's all you need. That's all you need. I think that Paris, they try to play around Cruz going for the boops, but if Cruz is shut down, like if he's blocked, it feels like they don't know what to do and they don't have any like backup plan. They don't know what else to do because it seems like they rely so heavily on Cruz with the set plays, and once countered, it's very difficult to come up with new plans on the fly like this. Atlanta basically made Paris seem like a completely different team from when they do the first push on second point. So they clean up. Now for second fight, Pogba goes for some fire strikes, you know, they try to poke, etc. But this is when they go for the elevator push. I don't think Paris has any idea of the elevator push. It doesn't look like it. And what happens is, well, I'm gonna show it soon, but I think it's some credit has to go for the rest of Atlanta, where they take the standard positions for example, for Pokpo here to spam with Fire Strike. I think that Paris, they know that the friend has his ult because Soon is close to his ult and also lost the fighter. So maybe they are trying to watch out for something from Cafe or from Dark or IT.
Right through it and skip this whole first fight phase in point B.
So what's gonna happen here is
What are they doing right now?
That is it.
the Fran, he's gonna slide on the roof here. So you speed boost and you shoot into the ground. So you boost yourself, slide, shoot again. Then you keep sliding and you grab from above. I know this is a Reddit play taken from Reddit. However, I think whoever came up with it probably got inspired by Winston's sliding on the roof, and it's usually, for example, sliding on the roof here is one of the primary ways you avoid damage as Winston or as Farah, for example, because you simply LOS and all. So I think it's, I really like this play. I think it's a very good play to try and pull off in a match, because even though, you know, it seems like cheesy and all, it's not very risky. He hits the grab. He doesn't have any energy, but he doesn't need any energy either. What do you do as Paris in this moment, for example? You can't really do anything. They still pop Trance and Rally though. And I don't think they should have. Because once they pop Trance and Rally, like you can go for pin, you can go for bomb, etc. And you don't really have any control here at all. I think the Trance was based on just reaction. Like having continuously practiced to use Trance as soon as there's a grab. Then for the third fight, Paris, they push out of Saloon. They come down here. They use they push out with beat, and they try to grab Pokpo and kill him. I don't think pushing out with beat is the best thing to do. Like, it's usually like 8 out of 10 times you don't want to push out with beat or engage with beat, because you want the beat for grabs, etc. But since the friend used, well, I think it's actually the right thing, because the friend and Deiko, they use the grab and bomb combo, so there's no real threat anymore. Like, you can use beat to cycle it. However, if the friend gets a new grab and Pip doesn't get his trance, it's a lost ult cycle. Dako and the friend, they are kind of position here, because once Paris rotates out, they have to drop, and it's a bit of time to drop. It's also kind of awkward. So now, what can you do as the Fran up here? Because you can't really bubble, you can't really right click, left click, and I don't think, let's see, I don't think Pokpo should have engaged here. Because, like, I think the right thing is to position next to the cart. Because if you go in front of the cart, you can get pinned, for example, very easily. So you use beat, to use grab, bomb. I think, you know, they end up using so much, it's, you know, it's whatever. Strong boot by Crewster. So Paris, now they try to snowball with Shatter. And Pokpo, he blocks the Shatter, Then he shatters back. The Fran uses his grab, but Paris, they end up killing the Fran and Pokpo as the grab is out.
Waits to get over walls. That's a big earth shatter from Benbest, but the follow-up just isn't there yet for Atlanta Reign, or for Paris Eternal rather. Atlanta Reign having to try to fight out of this. They do take down Pokpo as a start.
They end up dying themselves though, as well.
Gonna lose his shield and then his life as Massa finishes him off. Be able to get a bit more distance on the
elimination on him is really the
So for the next fight, for the last fight here, this one is a bit interesting. Paris, they need to contest without any ults. And because they don't have any ults, that's why they go for left side here. Since it's a lot easier to contest cart, you don't have to deal with the tiny chokes. And Cruz, he wants to go for boops. Cruz is kept under control. Massa here. So I think Massa and the Fran, they keep tabs on Cruz. Once Cruz is, they keep Cruz under control. The Fran, he ends up going around Benbest and body blocks him at this corner. Benbest then gets focused down and the rest is GG.
Paris Eternal just trying to find any way they can to stop Atlanta Reign, but it's not going well. Benbest down again. Atlanta just had his number all day.
So to just show it again, here's the Fran going around Benbest because Benbest is staying in one location. Bubbles is used as well.
Paris Eternal just
And now he turns his shield, he gets discorded. Still discorded, I mean. But since he was bubbled before, they need to reapply discord. And yeah, he can't move out. He can't really pin, because if he pins, the Fran is simply gonna dodge it. And they still kill Benbest. Then for when third point starts, Dako, he sets up on high ground and he tries to look for boop onto Paris. But Paris, they push out before Dako's boosters are back online. Paris, they try to pull off grab bomb combo, but they don't get anything, and then they use B to counter Dako's bomb. Urst and Pokpo, they die first, and that basically means, you know, Atlanta has to reset. And during the reset, the Fran uses his grab, Pip uses his trance, and I'll just play it out. I'll show exactly what happens here. But because Hip uses his trance, the Fran, Atlanta will then be able to push with their own trance, while Paris has to use. They don't have anything for the next grab. There's the missed boop. Now they grab. And they use beat to counter Finz's bomb here. Totally fine. I don't think Massa needed to be beat this early though. Because, well, Dogman, he's back here, he's safe. Pokpo, he's getting focused down, sure, he has Discord on him. He might die, I'm not sure though. I feel like Pokpo can survive, and they could do something that Shock often does, for example, beating at the not very end of beat, but right before, not very end of bomb, I mean, basically beat before the bomb explodes, just to get the max HP. And I think this is more of the style of the team, because Atlanta, they end up focusing a lot on strict bubble usage. And I think Massa also probably felt pressured by Cruz here, because Cruz can boop him upwards and delay the beat. So I think that's probably why the beat came out too early, because by the time bomb explodes, the beat has decayed a lot. Nothing dies though. Now they use their bomb. Paris use their beat. And now they get a ton of kills. I think this is pretty good by the Fran. He uses grab while exiting. If Paris would realize that Atlanta, they can't really do anything, right? If Hip would pay attention to the kill feed, he would know Atlanta, they don't have anything to kill them. But yeah, he uses trance here, and that's big, really big. The Fran, he survives with the energy as well. That's another thing to notice.
Got out of there because they saw the trance coming in. They realized that it was not a winnable fight with the amount of players and damage that they had.
Right.
And he's, like the Fran, he's gonna go farm up a new graph.
But yes,
Easily. Soon, caught off guard. Let's see why he got caught off guard. Oh yeah, he has no bubble. He has no bubble, and he takes the long route. He seems to stay here as well, so I guess he just realized he's dead. Cruz ends up trying to save him, but he gets picked off as well. So another, well, he doesn't get picked off, but close to being picked off. Daco a bit too far forward. Let's see here. I think Atlanta automatically wins because Soon is dead here. Masa is returning from spawn, but I think killing Zarya is bigger than killing Lucia. So in the last fight here, Soon he has Grav and so does the Fran. However, Pokpo gets an important shatter onto Soon, and then the Fran goes with the Grav, and Paris can't really do anything. So here's the shatter coming in, and because Soon is dropping, that's yeah. Just how to say it? It's yeah, one fight. Then let's go for when Atlanta defends here. So far, Atlanta has outplayed Paris pretty hard. Not just in skill. I think they outplayed them with the strategy and tactics. Basically shutting down Cruz all the time. Punishing Benbest for staying AFK. Or not AFK, but they basically know exactly what Paris wants to do. And it's like Paris hasn't created any other plans. Maybe they now I don't know anything about how Paris made their strats or anything, but they mention how they are the strongest GOATS team, for example. They would lose against European GOATS when they scrimmed, as far as I remember, before they went to LA. And something tells me that they are basically copying. You know, they copy, but they can't. They haven't played GOATS long enough together to be able to pull off the same type of recoveries that Vancouver does when Bumper dies or someone else dies.
He's best in show so far. He's best in show. That's right.
Basically creating backup plans on the fly.
I love that movie.
And I think it's really good by Atlanta here to anti-strat Paris this much. So first fight, Paris, they're gonna try the same rotation as Atlanta did, but they end up going for a fake. Use their bubbles here as well. And I think because they use their bubbles, they're waiting here. So now they go back. And in my opinion, Atlanta has the advantage here, because if Masa wants to go for Boop, he can definitely go for Boop. The thing is that as Pokpo, you really can't leave this corner once the enemy has secured this triangle, basically. Because if you get in front of this triangle, your support Dogman here, he can't really orb you, and he has to step to the right in order to orb, and also Discord orb. It's very bad for the supports. So Atlanta, they need to wait for Paris to push up and then rotate backwards. Because then Paris their support line is going to be in the back here. And if Benbest or anyone else, he push up the point, Yozen, I think he can only play back here. That's as far back as he can go. Cruz going for boop on Erster. Erster reacting quickly, using stun to go back. Really important.
I didn't quite get it that time. That was a clever trick play. He came over the roof to see if they could displace them. That was a fun play from Paris.
Now Pogba, he's gonna end up getting split because Cruz boops both Pogba. Well, soon. Now they set up almost the same positioning as or formation as when they attacked. Cruz, he's gonna go for boop here onto Pogba and Defran. Defran uses his bubble onto Pogba, and I think because Defran used the bubble and because they got booped, they can now force Pogba into the corner here called Fridge, where it's yeah, he gets split off from the team and he can't really do anything. It's a lot of damage. I think this is... I'm not sure about the positioning here from Pogba. He guards himself from Cruz, that's for sure. But it's very rough if you turn your shield and... Yeah, there's the boop. He's discorded, half damage as well. Bubble comes in. They burst bubble and kill him. So yeah, they win first fight there. For second fight, Defran uses grab and parries to stack both support ults here. As Atlanta, you just disengage and then re-engage to kill them after. So grab comes out, trance and beat comes out. I think this is a major mistake on Paris' side. It should never happen in OWL games. It can happen at max once per game. Like once across 5 maps, in my opinion. That's how unacceptable the mistake is. Because, yeah, it's a fundamental issue. Mistake, I mean. And probably communication. So third fight. Paris, they use their grab, and they try to force Dogman to use his trance. Atlanta, well, they try to force, it forces Dogman's trance out so that Atlanta doesn't die to the damage from Ryan, Zarya, etc. And Finzi then uses his bomb, and because bomb comes out, Masa has to use his beat. So, in some cases, let's see here. Grab comes out. Grab comes on the corner here because D.Va can't eat it. And as I mentioned, in some cases, you don't need to use trance first or beat as soon as there's a grab. But because parries are so close to the grab, the damage is unstoppable and you need the trance to not die. Otherwise, you know, you don't have enough time to apply the beat even. Defran, he also takes a pin with the bubble on. Lock Chatter. Here's a kill onto Nico. That's a big kill. And I think the rest is just good positioning on Atlanta side. Cruz, he keeps going for these Reddit plays here. And Defran farms up a new grab. So for the fourth fight here, Pogba goes for Shatter, Hip gets stunned, Nico, while Nico gets pushed, then Defran uses his grab because Trance is running out, and then Erster pops Rally so that the team survives. Daco goes for the bomb, and it ends up killing Paris, but Cruz ends up not using his beat. And I think they don't want to use the beat because Atlanta doesn't have anything to engage with next fight. So here, because Pip uses his trance early, it means they can go for the Grav. Grav comes out. Pip is also out of position, by far. By a lot, I mean. So, you can see the trance radius goes here. He can easily heal up Benbest. Well, there's also the thing that Pokpo can shield from the trance and all. But yeah, Hip gets caught. His trance ends before the Grav ends. They die. And I think because the trance ends before the Grav ends, Cruz doesn't use beat. And it's a good choice. Now the Fran tries to get some poke damage, build some more Grav. And let's see, I think that Paris just outspeed, the outspeed Atlanta, can't handle the pressure, and then they end up getting pushed back. They get staggers as well. It happens, you know, when you try to escape. I think Dogman expected to live. For the next fight here, Sue and Fincy, they go for a grab bomb combo. Atlanta, they counter it with Shatter and then beat. So the Shatter stops the damage, beat stops the bomb. Also a big block plus bubble. And Dako hasn't used his bomb, but Cruz beats. Let's see. They beat because of the Shatter, I think. And this is most likely to shield Benbest here. But the Frandon, he can go for his own Grav, and Dako has bomb ready. So Paris, they're behind in ult economy, and Nico, as they push out here, Nico gets locked into a corner. Paris then uses Shatter, also trance, and it kills Dogman, but Poco shatters back and the Frank grabs again. And that's how they win the fight. So he lobs out the grab right before turning here. And I'm gonna talk about this later when I do the Fran analysis. But I think this is very typical to the Fran, where it doesn't look like he's about to use grab and he just uses it. It's like one of his, I think it's, you can call it signature moves. No one else seems to do this, just like him, I mean. So Atlanta, they come back. Now, Atlanta, they hold far up here, so that if they die, they can respawn, they can run back to the cart, and yeah. They won't have to deal with respawn timers. And ends up getting kills here. And they use trance for it as well, which is, I think they use trance to secure the fight. However, let's see here. I don't think they wanted to finish the fight here. But maybe they were afraid of Soon and his ult. Maybe they, you know, didn't track the ult properly. I don't know. Because Paris, they will have enough time to touch cart here. You also do it. I think there's two scenarios. The first one, you take the fight with the trance so that they can build ult charge, while Paris can't build ult charge because they'll die quickly. In Atlanta, they will get grabbed, they will get shatter, etc. And the second possible cause is that they simply overestimates the timing for... They overestimate the timer, basically, I mean, and the timing for the respawns. Finzi, he dies, and that's why they all in here. However, Paris, they go back into spawn, and now Atlanta, they just have to back. Pogba, he's being seen as he goes for the corner here. I think so, at least. I don't have the top-down map, but I think he's seen, because Benbest is checking, Finzi is checking, Nico is checking, Cruz ends up checking, everyone knows, basically. It could also be, if Pogba wasn't seen, the only thing that tells them, okay, this is a setup, it's because Pogba is not seen in the choke, and everyone else is holding far up. Now, it's normal for Zarya to hold far up, because of spamming right clicks, but I think it's Pogba being seen, as the exit spawn. Then Cruz goes for a boop. This is a strong play from Cruz, they try to save him, and now you have to decide, right in this moment, do we engage and die, or do we take the fight with Pogba down? They go in, and I think that's the right thing, but everyone else seems to be on a different page, or like the team is split in what you want to do. Maybe the friend tried to suicide in order to take the attention so that Zen can escape and all, but if you end up dying here, actually, I know exactly what the reason is. Cruz, he ends up going for the touch on cart, and that's probably why Dako and Massa tries to escape with Erster, because there's no timing left. So they get the kill on Cruz, but they end up dying as well. So Massa comes in, Dako is safe on high ground, but he drops down while matrixing for Massa. I think this is a mistake by Dako. Then he gets demeched. It happens. So because Dako is respawning here, I think this is all perfect. You know, it's not perfect, obviously, but it's not that bad. Not that bad, because Atlanta, they wanna exit from this choke anyways, right? And Dako, he has his boosters, he just respawned, he's running back. If he comes from the back, from behind, it's basically a sandwich. You still wanna engage, you still wanna fight, and I don't think it's gonna hurt them. If it was anyone else than D.Va, then it would hurt, because you can't escape. That's a big shatter on Benbest, because Benbest bubble was slow. I think Suin just slow reaction time on it. Or Pogba early, like not early, but very quick on his shatter. Now, here's a bomb. Dako heats Soon's grab, which makes the bomb really easy to avoid. Dako still dies, but, you know, it's whatever. Because Atlanta has won the fight here. Then let's go for Anubis. Anubis was... Oh wait, Anubis is over here. So Anubis was kinda surprising to me, because Paris, they end up using Bastion on the defense. I think it's really unnecessary. It's really unnecessary because it doesn't kill goats. Well, it might kill goats in scrims, but all you have to do is rush. And you can play around the Bastion with a Naim line of sight. You can go dive, for example. And if you force the enemies onto a bad position, for example, if you go point and threaten point, you have to rotate. You can get out with, for example, ball or whatever. you just have to set up a surround with dive, for example. That's the reason why Atlanta goes triple tank here. Triple tank dive.
Temple of Anubis, it will be
They start off with kind of a weird comp here. I don't think they're gonna play it by any means. They're just using it to scout.
wacky on the attack.
So they see the comp, they go back.
That they were running, but they are going to have to play dive.
And here's the triple tank dive. I think triple tank dive has quite too little damage. It doesn't have that much damage because sure, you have pile driver, you have jump, you have cleave, you have the missile barrage, but you're lacking strong burst fire, if that makes sense. Maybe the ball is used here instead of Genji because Genji is very easy to shut down, especially if you're facing a brig. And maybe they just feel like they're too squishy because Benbest might suck them in and then soon just finishes with his shots.
And that means that the wrecking ball
But yeah, all they want to do is they want to get to surround them, then engage onto Bastion. Soon Bally dies, and then Atlanta dies one by one as they try to re-engage. So I'm gonna look at this engage again. I think the engage from Pokepo is alright, because you can't go anywhere else. If you try to go behind the pillar, you're gonna get booped, you're gonna get focused, stunned, etc. Can't really go here either. So at the edge is very fine because you can drop down. You just want to do cleave damage. Because of the shield, Dogman can't really do anything. So they try to discord, but I think Dogman should try to rotate as well as they engage because yeah, the shield is blocking there. He won't be focused anyways, right? So Dogman's still in the choke. And I think if he would be in mini, he would be a bit more in position to have some impact. Because the shield is, yeah, as I mentioned, completely shutting him off. So it's essentially a 5v6 when they miss the first fight, well, the first engage. Then they go in one by one, ends up dying. Hip dies, but yeah, everyone else is alive. For next fight here, Erster, he messes up his hook, and then because of his hook, it desyncs the engage and Pokpo ends up dying. Because he gets focused down. So here's the hook. I think that Erster probably tried to hook here. Maybe he intentionally hooked up here, but because of the direction, I think the direction is the most important part, like the initial direction, because he ends up having to go for a side entry. I think that he wants to enter through this, like choke, or this arch. And he probably wants to knock people off platform instead of coming from above, right? So he wants to knock people off, but yeah, messes up. It happens. I think this is just muscle memory on Hammond. That feeling, you know, not feeling, but whenever this happens to anyone playing Hammond, everyone feels the exact same thing. You feel sort of, not dumb, but you feel like clumsy, right? And I think this is just Erster, not familiar enough with Hammond. Because if he was familiar enough with Hammond, he would release the hook before even bouncing, you know, after the choke. Then they end up wasting a lot of time here. Nico displaces Erster and then they get a lot of ult charge. Soon he already has his ult, so it's no big deal, but they're just wasting time by keeping the fight going after Pokemon is dead. So in the third fight, Atlanta they surround Paris, and then they use ults to clear the enemies. Well, Paris they try to use ults, and Atlanta they use ults as well. And I think it's pretty easy to say that Atlanta just has the strong ults because they drop balls here. Soon is standing still. He's gonna get hit by the explosions, by Hammond balls and all. Yeah. Much better engage. And he can't go into Sentry mode because if he does, he's gonna get booped.
For the moment, now the self-destruct coming out. Taco gets pushed away by that one, pops his own self-destruct. Meanwhile,
So their Erster kills Soon, and the rest is just cleanup. I don't think Paris even should have pulled out Bastion because it's very easy to break it, right? And it's extremely awkward when you go to second point. It's extremely awkward because now you switch to goats. And the only ults you have is Trance, Bomb, and some tiny bit of Rally, right? Maybe Paris expected Atlanta to not run goats here because their Fran is out. So that's why they used the Bastion. And because Atlanta didn't use Bastion, he would also have to make some awkward swaps onto second point. But going into second point, Atlanta they have both their support ults while Whip he only has Trance, and yeah, there's no Lucia of course. I feel like Paris they lack a bit too much to stop the snowball. They're betting too much onto using Trance to stop snowball with. Because if Daco didn't use his bomb, then you have nothing to stop the bomb. Except, you know, shield blocks, etc. So they go to cave here. And worth pointing out, you can't really see it. It's kind of dark, but Cruz is up here. I think because they see Cruz, they can now go for a fake that a lot of teams seem to do. Or they can go for boop on Benbest. But Benbest pushes back. And now it's kinda hard for Cruz to get back into a good position if they go main. So that's why they go for the fake here. So they use Trance here. And they kill Fincy first. Both teams uses the Trance actually. But Atlanta they just kept the point as Paris are dying. Cruz is dead. And this is just good positioning by Atlanta. You see how everyone is forcing Benbest here. Forcing Benbest and Nico. They're not split. They're all into one direction. Here. So unless, if you want to survive this as Paris, you gotta back out earlier. So they kept the point. I really like what Atlanta pulls out so far. Let's see, Paris, they go for goats but have Nico on Widow to start with, and that's probably because they expect Enlair to, I hope I pronounce it correct, but Enlair to play Widow or something else. The Orisa comp that Atlanta are playing is was very commonly used on Anubis first point in OWL Season 1. I think it's a really strong comp versus tanks, unless you force a rotation from the Orisa. And the reason for that is because Junkrat freely spams. It's way too much damage from Junkrat. So Junkrat gets 2 kills with the mines. Nothing you really can do, right? You gotta reset. And the forward position is strong versus tanks. It's weak versus dive. Now Widow isn't really contested either, so yeah, Widow can go for kills on supports if they aren't walking all in. So if supports don't walk in, Widow picks them off. If they do walk in, Junkrat spams everyone, right? So it's a catch-22 scenario. You basically got a force point with tanks here. Now Ursa uses Tire, kills doesn't kill the mech, but it brings mech to 5% HP, I think.
Keep saying this, Noah, but we need to see more of these strategies. This strategy is still very...
Now for the fourth push, Paris, they push through quad again, but they lose their Moira due to Junkrat spam. Then Erster, he loses his positioning because he drops down, well, he ends up in front of the platform, and he will get punished for it. Now this is kind of an awkward position for Rissa, because if you're forced back, eventually the enemies will run into your shield and go past it. That's when you lose. And if you stand forward, it's not that much distance and you still lose value from your shield. Widow, she doesn't really have much ways of rotating here. If you get shoved into the room here, it's very hard to deal with Reinhardt, so you gotta keep rotating.
Without losing somebody to end layers, Widowmaker, or getting hit again by a bunch of mines, and they're already low. That's the thing.
So they try to go for a boop onto Benbest here, but Nico stuns Daco.
Self-destruct gets his mech back at full health. Now here comes the Tire after Paris is already scrambled away.
Good find on Cruz here, very big. And because of that, you gotta reset as Paris.
Because look at the ult charge they have. In order to win.
Yep. Gonna try to just charge in. Oh, him dies right as he gets his coalescence.
Yeah, this is where, yeah, Moira dies. And then Erster picked off. So in the same fight, this is when Erster is picked off. They push the bongos. Pogba uses bongos because why not, right? He fortifies, tries to escape here. Trance is used. Daco eats Soon's grab. And because Erster is so far back, he uses Tire from essentially spawn and gets 2 big kills. Now you can avoid this as a Reinhardt. It's not very difficult to block, but you can definitely kill the Tire. It's only 100 HP. You can fire strike, whip, and then you can. It's a small timing, but you can definitely do it. They end up dying. Cruz, I think he wanted to use beat before the Tire, but ends up being too slow. And then you just come up and clean up, I mean.